Well, that was a fucking boring episode. The Last of Us Season 2 has come out, and this is how they start the season, with Ellie behaving like a complete cunt, cringe girl boss moments where she beats a man 3 times her size in a fight, Joel crying to a psychiatrist like a fucking woman, the very fact that they have a psychiatrist in a post-apocalyptic world, women complaining about sexism.
If you'd rather let the men handle it.
And you're telling me what, if it were you and Joel, you wouldn't have gone in?
Well, that ain't the same.
Why?
Because it's different.
How?
And boring teen drama between Ellie and Dina, which is easily the worst part of this show. Being based on that piece of shit sequel, I knew that this season was going to be bad, but fuck me was this episode shit. I mean, barely anything happens throughout its entirety. We finally get to see Abby, who doesn't look like the macho man Abby Savage that she was in the games, because Neil Cookman was unable to find a woman alive who looks like that. I mean, look at her fucking arms, they're like tree trunks. And this is supposed to be 20 years into the apocalypse as well, so how does Abby get her hands on so much protein powder?
This is fucking retarded.
The entire decision to make her a roided up tranny was absolutely retarded, and this casting is proof of that. Now, Cookman will never admit it, but casting a tiny Abby is itself an admission that the depiction of Abby in the games and her ability to bend a frying pan with her bare hands was a terrible idea. And I think as the season progresses, we will see many more examples of other rollbacks to various decisions that he made in the games. But until then, we have the rest of episode 1 to examine. Now, the biggest problem with the season so far, which is going to affect every episode going forward, is of course the casting. Almost every character in this has been badly miscasted. Some are much worse than others, but almost everyone should have been played by someone else who is way more suited for the role and actually looks like the character. First is Pedro Pascal. He's fine, but he's not Joel. He's not a bad actor and is clearly capable of giving a competent performance, but he lacks the intensity and stoicism that the real Joel displayed. He mumbles through most of his scenes, is less aggressive, and is way more emotional than the character should be. Partly this is down to the writing, since this Joel is clearly a weaker, softer and more sadder version when compared to his video game counterpart. But even when he is in scenes that are identical to the video games, Troy Baker, who played Joel, was able to give a more natural performance with far superior line delivery.
You just come after her.
You just come after her.
Whereas Pedro, on the other hand, feels stiff and flat and is just reading the lines with a wooden posture. Now, to be fair to him, he does an okay job and is not the worst miscast of the show. No, that honour belongs to Bella Ramsey, or as I like to call her, Bella Palsy. She is horrendously miscasted as Ellie. As an actress, she is passable at best. It is possible to coach 1 or 2 good scenes out of her, but on the whole, she's just not that good. She is a tiny midget that looks like she weighs 90 pounds soaking wet, which is a huge problem when the show has her fighting men who are 3 times her size. She is so small that she makes Tom Holland look like an adult, and even when we get the 5-year time skip, Ellie looks no different before or afterwards, which makes it totally unbelievable when she tries to behave like an adult. She still has a child's body, which I'm sure the producers of Hollywood absolutely love, but for what is required of the character, especially in this season where Ellie goes on a rampage, her tiny physical stature is going to present a huge problem. She's either going to fight what are essentially giant men when compared to her, which looks fucking ridiculous, or you cast the weakest, tiniest men possible to compensate for her petiteness. But then the dark tone of the show would be massively undercut if all the tough guys look like Timothée Chalamet. It's a no-win scenario, and what's annoying is that the writers had the perfect opportunity to replace her during the time skip with a much better actress, and everyone is pretty much in agreement that it should have been Kaylee Spanley from Alien Romulus. Not only is she a dead ringer for Ellie, but she's also a much better actress than Mrs. Potato Head here, and can actually come across as pretty likeable. Unfortunately though, they missed that opportunity and now we are stuck with a stunted Ellie who is just not enjoyable to watch, especially when her character has become an even bigger cunt after the time skip. Now, to be fair to Bella, older Ellie is not an easy character for anyone to play, since she is a much more selfish piece of shit who makes the dumbest decisions possible and lacks the vulnerability and humour that made the younger Ellie much more relatable. But again, I have to hammer down this point, this more aggressive Ellie is just not compatible with Bella Ramsey's small stature, as being a girl boss as well as a cunt whilst also being so physically lacking only adds to the ridiculousness of the whole thing. I mean, when you see a tiny angry Ellie running around Seattle killing grown men, it's just going to be embarrassing to watch, which is not what you want in your serious HBO drama. The next character I want to talk about is Tommy. Now, this is more of a criticism of the writing than the actor himself because he has nothing to work with. Don't get me wrong, Latino Tommy looks absolutely nothing like his blonde counterpart, but the main difference between the two Tommys is that this Tommy is a weak bitch who defers every choice to his wife, as she is the one who gets to make all of the decisions all the time. Maria constantly emasculates Tommy and he gives no pushback. In fact, he seems to lose all agency whenever she's around. Tommy is practically smothered by his wife, but that's probably because there's so much of her. Speaking of Maria, she is no longer blonde, skinny and white, but fat, black and annoying. Everyone kisses her ass and says that she's this great leader, but she never displays any qualities that make a good leader. She always corrects people.
Well, that ain't the same.
Why?
Because it's different.
How?
Makes stupid comments.
I didn't like that.
It is that, literally. This is the commune. We're communists.
And is spared from making any actual tough choices that someone in her position would be forced to make on a daily basis. Finally, we have Dina, who also looks like a child. Dina is annoying and her teen drama with Ellie is by far the worst thing in this episode. I don't think I can take a full season watching her and Sputnik here running around Seattle giggling like high school girls before then being lectured about the Torah.
What's this?
Oh, this is the Torah.
I don't give a fuck.
Their relationship just feels forced and she is as annoying of a girl boss as Ellie is. Dina has very little in terms of a personality for the audience to connect with, and if this story follows the games exactly, then there's going to be long portions of the show where it's just the two of them alone and with no one else to bounce off. Can you imagine just how bad they are going to be if this is what they are like now in episode 1?
Just fucking kill me.
Now, before I go through the plot, I also wanted to quickly talk about just how shit this version of the apocalypse is, since no one in the show seems to be taking it seriously. The first season had this problem too, as there were barely any zombies in the zombie apocalypse. People are able to walk all across America and never encounter any. And even if they did, it was usually down to their own incompetence that got them killed and not the infected. And in season 2, it's no different, as even when they do come across infected, Ellie and Dina are shown not to take them seriously. They're joking around and acting like it's no big deal to fight a monster that can literally rip you to pieces. They even go out of their way to fight them, and when they finally get called out on their dangerous and reckless behaviour, they just cry about sexism, like that's the real problem and not the fucking man-eating clickers. Fuck me, this show is shit. The only positive thing I can say is that it's well funded and well made. Being on HBO, of course, it's nice to look at, but at the end of the day, a polished turd is still just a turd, and HBO has 7 more courses ready to serve to the audience each and every week. So, with that lovely thought in mind, here is a quick rundown of the plot, or lack thereof. It begins right after where the first season ended, and we see Abby complaining to the other surviving Fireflies after Joel's rampage, saying that they should have gone after him and not tried to save the others. If this is the writers trying to make her more endearing to the audience, then they are clearly failing. One of the Fireflies says that they will get revenge on Joel, but in the meantime they should head up north to join another group in order to get information on him. We then cut to 5 years later, where a tiny Ellie is fighting a grown man 3 times her size, and during it she somehow manages to overpower him before then putting him in a submission hold that makes him tap out.
Well, that's just silly. Silly, yes. Idiotic, yes.
Afterwards, Ellie gets told that the guy who hit her was holding back, which is clearly bullshit that was put in by the writers to avoid girlboss accusations, as we can clearly see that he is in fact trying for the whole fight. But even if he did let her win, then what would be the point of this whole exercise, as it helps no one? In fact, it would be counterproductive because you're giving Ellie the false belief that she can fight a man one-on-one when she can't, tempting her to do so in a real combat scenario that's just going to get her killed. And as for the guy, unless he's being paid a small fortune to lose to such a tiny goblin, this loss has surely got to be humiliating. So what's in it for either one of them exactly?
What a fucking waste of time.
It doesn't matter anyway, as we then get to see how Joel is living in this place. First, he is lectured by Maria about refugees, since he tries to have sensible opinions about not letting in more people than you can support. But arguing with Maria is pointless, since she's a dumb bitch with the mind of a modern day shitlib, so to her things like resource management doesn't matter. Afterwards, Joel goes to meet his therapist because in the apocalypse, the highest priority for a settlement is to have an emotional rag for everyone to cry on.
Christ, who wrote this?
She says that Joel shot and killed her husband a year ago, which must have been during the time skip, before then berating him about how much of a bitch he is, because all he does every day is whine about Ellie.
Let's try something different.
Like what?
Oh, like not pretending you have the most boring problem in the world.
The therapist woman knows that Joel isn't telling the whole story about Ellie, but when she asks him what happened, he starts to cry like a woman before then leaving. Not only is crying like a little bitch completely out of character for Joel, but this is him feeling guilty for killing all the Fireflies to save Ellie, which Joel would never do since he knows that he did the right thing. He prevented a bunch of maniacs from harvesting a young girl's brain without her consent, so him crying makes absolutely no sense, but that's because this is not the real Joel, but a pussified version of the character written by a male feminist. We then cut to Dina and Ellie and are reminded that they are both gay, by the way, before they then go out on patrol. Dina invites Ellie to go to the party with her and she agrees as they both giggle like schoolgirls.
Oh my god, who the hell cares?
They eventually come across a bunch of dead bodies and instead of reporting it back to camp, Ellie and Dina decide to ignore the patrol leader's orders and go inside the nearby camp simply because they want to have fun. Now, the writers are either women or retarded because only they would be deluded enough to think that fighting this fucking thing that wants to eat your face would be anyone's idea of a great time.
This is so fucking stupid.
Inside the supermarket, Ellie takes down a clicker easily all by herself before then falling through the floor. What's funny is that no one on the outside comes in to help despite all the noise going on, so I can only assume that they too, just like me, are secretly hoping that the pair of them die. Anyway, Ellie gets attacked by another infected who manages to bite her, but she goes on to kill it. The pair of them are then taken before a tribunal where Tommy says that what they did was wrong, as they pointlessly endangered not only themselves but also everyone else's lives too, simply because the two of them wanted to act like a couple of girl bosses. Ellie and Dina do a shit job defending themselves, saying what's the difference between her and Dina, two tiny, weak and feeble women entering a building to go and kill infected for no other reason than because they wanted to show off, compared to Tommy and Joel, who are both fully grown and experienced men. Now, the difference should be obvious to anyone who isn't a complete retard, and it's that Joel and Tommy would never make such a stupid decision because they're not trying to prove anything. and they wouldn't have endangered the rest of the team as well, who would have had to attempt a rescue if one of them had gotten injured. But the worst thing about this whole trial is that Maria, the sanctimonious cunt she is, turns around and defends Ellie, implying that what Tommy is saying is sexist. Fuck me, I can't be the only one who finds Maria to be so obnoxious.
Oh, what a bitch!
Anyway, Maria demonstrates to all of us why she is the worst leader ever by letting the pair of them get away with reckless insubordination before we then cut to the big party. Dina and Ellie start munching on each other's faces until a white man comes over and calls them dykes.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
Joel teleports out from nowhere and knocks him to the ground, but Ellie, being the ungrateful cunt that she is, doesn't thank him. No, she embarrasses Joel by telling him to go fuck himself right in front of everyone.
I don't need your fucking help.
Why are you the way that you are?
The episode then ends with a shot of Macho Man Abby Savage reaching the communist commune.
I don't care.
This episode was shit. It wasn't entertaining, and all the male characters are shown to be weak and pathetic, whilst every woman tries to act like a man but instead comes across like a petulant arsehole. The teen drama between Dina and Ellie is unbearable. Joel is a husk of who he's supposed to be, Tommy is a weak bitch, Maria is a sanctimonious cunt, and barely anything happened all episode. Thankfully, next week we get to see Pedro Pascal be clubbed to death like a baby seal, but other than that, we are still in for another terrible episode. Anyway, that was episode 1 of The Last of Us Part 2.
It's a piece of shit.